The scumbag husband forced me to leave the marriage with nothing, unaware that I was about to claim a 500 million yuan lottery prize. After the divorce, I spent 100 million yuan to buy all the shops near the community. As the landlady, the first thing I did was to send the photos of the scumbag's family to the tenants. If anyone allows this bunch of dogs to enter the store even once, the rent will increase by 50 yuan per month. The big screens in each store are playing the embarrassing affairs of the scumbag's whole family on a loop. They thought I was causing trouble because of the divorce, but they didn't know I was hiding a much bigger secret in my heart. After receiving the news of winning the 500 million yuan lottery, I rushed home excitedly. There was a large crowd of people surrounding the door. Could they have already known? I pushed my way through the crowd and saw a man with tattoos on his arms smashing my front door with a hammer. My mind went blank, and I rushed forward to question him about what was going on. He sneered and said, "This is your home? You idiot. Your husband is sleeping with my wife in there." The people around burst into laughter. I was so angry that my whole body was shaking. I fumbled for the keys and opened the door. I saw my husband looking terrified, trying to lock the bedroom door. The tattooed man rushed forward in one swift move, picked up my husband like a chicken, and threw him to the ground. The mistress on the bedroom bed was half naked, shivering and hiding under the covers. I let out a scream and rushed onto the bed, tearing at her like crazy. The tattooed man dragged me off, grabbed my hair, and slapped me hard. "Don't you dare hit my wife." There was a buzzing in my ears, and my vision became a bit dizzy. Suddenly, I was pushed by my husband who had gotten up. "What do you think you are? How dare you hit my Isabel?" I stumbled a few steps and couldn't hold on to the dressing table beside me. My palm hit the ground, and a vertical screw on the ground immediately pierced into my palm. The sharp pain made me scream out, and my palm started bleeding profusely. "This has nothing to do with me." The tattooed man nervously pulled the mistress away, and before leaving, he gave my husband a fierce glare. "This isn't over, you son of a bitch." I looked at my panicked husband, feeling as if my whole body had fallen into an ice cellar. Back then, despite my family's opposition, I resolutely chose the lover I had been with since campus days. I took meticulous care of his mother, who was in poor health, and started from scratch with him as street vendors. After several years of hard work, we paid off hundreds of thousands of yuan in debts and then saved enough money to buy a house. Just as life was starting to improve, he was pulling this kind of stunt. When I suddenly learned about winning the lottery today, my first thought was that our family could finally live a good life. We wouldn't have to endure the looks of disdain from both sides of the relatives anymore, nor would we have to be street vendors hiding from the sun, rain, and urban management officers. Thinking of this, I couldn't help but laugh coldly. The bet I made in my youth had ultimately come to nothing. "Mom, what's wrong with your hand?" My daughter, who had just come home from school, ran over crying. She gently lifted my arm with her soft little hand and sobbed, "Mom, does it hurt so much?" She blew gently on my hand. I stroked her hair, and the tears I had held back for a long time finally burst out. She tried to help me up, but my whole body was limp, and I didn't have any strength. My daughter looked at my husband and mother-in-law, who had come back with him for help. "What's the fuss? It's just a little blood. If you don't have the life of a rich lady, don't act like one. Now I still have to cook for you all. I'm such a poor old woman." My mother-in-law glanced at me and turned to enter the kitchen. "Come on, stop pretending. I'll go find a pair of pliers to pull out the nail for you and disinfect it with some alcohol." My husband looked at me with disgust, rummaging through the toolbox on the coffee table, making a lot of noise to vent his dissatisfaction. "No, the teacher said that if you get pricked by a nail, you have to go to the hospital for an injection." My daughter ran over to pull my husband, but he pushed her away impatiently. She fell to the ground, staring blankly at her father. I told you giving birth to a girl is a waste. For such a small thing, you want to go to the hospital? You've been wasteful since you were a kid. My mother-in-law came out of the kitchen with a kitchen knife when she heard the noise, glaring at us. My daughter was so frightened that she burst into tears, and my husband and mother-in-law started scolding even more harshly. I felt my blood boiling. I gritted my teeth, struggled to get up, and shielded my daughter in my arms. Oh, what's going on? I could hear your commotion all the way in the stairwell. It's so embarrassing. My sister-in-law came home from work, looking at me and my daughter with a displeased expression. I endured my anger and told them about my husband's affair, but my mother-in-law and sister-in-law didn't show any reaction. Instead, they looked disdainful. Look at you compared to Isabel. When you walk together, passers-by would think you're her mother. You don't know how to take care of yourself. With that haggard look of a yellow-faced woman, the whole family feels sick looking at you. Isabel is not only beautiful but also nice to me. Look at the necklace around my neck. She gave it to me. I looked at them in disbelief. So everyone knew that Ethan had cheated. Only I was treated as a stupid and free laborer by the whole family. No wonder Ethan had the guts to bring the mistress home. I lowered my head, looking at my calloused hands, and gave a bitter laugh. It was me who pushed the over 100 jean snack cart through the streets to save money for my mother-in-law's medical treatment. It was me who came back from the night market in the early morning, washed the accumulated dishes, clothes, and cleaned up the garbage all over the house. It was me who was woken up in the middle of the night by my mother-in-law when she felt unwell and helped her with massage and moxibustion. When the snack business was not doing well, it was me who carried cement bags under the 40°C heat on the construction site to save tuition fees for my sister-in-law. Thinking about all this, I suddenly burst into laughter, laughing until tears streamed down my face. Olivia, what were you trying to get? I stroked the butterfly hairpin on my daughter's head, recalling all the past events, and felt completely disheartened. After a while, I looked at the three people in front of me with a calm expression. Divorce. They cursed at me ferociously in front of me, constantly pushing and shoving me. It seemed as if my whole world lost its sound. I just stared blankly at their opening and closing mouths, numbly holding my daughter. Until I heard them threaten me that if I didn't leave the marriage with nothing, I wouldn't be able to take my daughter away. My arms holding my daughter tightened suddenly, and I agreed to all their unreasonable demands. Fearing that things might change if we waited, I dragged the scumbag to get a divorce certificate on the same day. I went home, packed my few belongings, held my daughter's little hand, and left without looking back the home where I had put in 7 years of hard work. Looking at the 500 million yuan transferred to my bank card, I thought, you owe me, and I will make you pay back 100 times sooner or later. I've been running around for these ungrateful people's lives for so long that I haven't treated myself well for a very, very long time. I looked at myself in the mirror. My skin was dark and rough, and my ill-fitting cheap clothes made me look even more slovenly. Even when I entered this beauty center, and the attendants looked at me with doubt, it was as if they were asking if I had entered the wrong place. Now, after swiping for a 28,888 yuan package, they arranged 5 technicians to serve me. I lay in a bathtub filled with flower petals, looking at the clear sky scenery of the city center park outside the window. Closing my eyes and enjoying the professional massage techniques of the technicians, I felt every cell in my body stretching comfortably. Miss, is this pressure okay? Let me know immediately if you feel any discomfort. Miss, we're applying our Center's Ace product to your face now to replenish the moisture of your skin. Miss, are there any fruits you're allergic to? We'll arrange afternoon tea for you. I half closed my eyes and responded casually. I had originally planned to enjoy this kind of life with those ungrateful people. Fortunately, God has eyes and let me see their true colors. After enjoying myself at the beauty center, I took my daughter and went on a shopping spree in the entire shopping mall. This mall is the most luxurious in the city. Usually, when I passed by, I didn't even dare to stop for more than a second. But now, I leaned on the leather sofa in the VIP room, watching the models arranged by the luxury brand show me all kinds of clothes. After indulging for a month, there was still 480 million yuan left in my card. I sighed. Having too much money that can't be spent is also a trouble. Well, next, it's time to settle accounts with those ungrateful people. The real estate agent looked at me obsequiously and brought over top-grade tea. He stood beside me, bending over and bowing his head, watching me sign 15 second-hand property sales agreements. The crow's feet at the corners of his eyes had several more folds, and he bent his waist even lower. "Oh, Olivia, you're so generous. You've taken care of my entire year's performance." I chuckled and told him to gather all the landlords of these 15 properties in Ethan's tea house for a meeting tomorrow. These 15 shops are the busiest ones around the community, including breakfast shops, supermarkets, convenience stores, restaurants, fresh food and fruit stores, etc., which are essential for the surrounding residents. At first, I just wanted the agent to buy back my house without alerting them, but the agent told me a piece of hearsay. After spending some money to verify it from multiple sources, it turned out to be true. So I changed my mind and waved my hand to buy 15 storefronts. Anyway, I'm not short of money now. Looking at the thick stack of property agreements, my eyes were cold. "Ethan, let's wait and see." The next day, I sat upright in Ethan's tea house and printed out photos of Ethan's family and the mistress, making them into booklets and distributing them to everyone. "Look carefully. I've made notes. These people are absolutely not allowed to appear in your stores. If I find out that they do, the rent will increase by 5,000 yuan per month." The faces of these landlords immediately turned ugly, and several of them couldn't hold back and wanted to stand up and question me. I chuckled. However, I'm easy to deal with. Renting my storefronts, there's only this one rule. As long as you follow it, you can rent for as long as you want, and I won't raise the rent by a single cent. Instantly, the crowd buzzed with excitement, and everyone's eyes and brows were beaming with joy. A more excited boss stepped forward, patting his chest to assure me, "Olivia, don't worry. These people are engraved in my mind. They won't be able to enter the store unless I'm dead." I played with the cup in my hand with a smile. Money is really a good thing. Now I'm just waiting for the good show to start. "Mom, look, Grandma is sweeping the street outside again." I clicked my tongue. Mom has been working hard all her life and can't stay idle at all. Even though I told her the amount of money I won from the lottery, she still doesn't want to enjoy a comfortable life. She insists on taking on the cleaning work of these streets just for a few thousand yuan. I walked over helplessly, snatched the broom from her hand, and told her to go inside and have a good rest. But then a familiar voice sounded behind me. "Oh, isn't this Olivia? After leaving Ethan, are you sweeping the street here?" I turned my head when I heard the voice. My sister-in-law affectionately held the mistress's hand, looking at me with mockery and contempt in her eyes. I chuckled. The characters arrived so quickly. Isn't the good show about to start? I picked up the broom and forcefully swept the garbage on the ground towards them. The black sewage splashed all over them. Suddenly, there were screams. My sister-in-law's face turned red with anger, and she was shaking all over. She pointed at me and said, "What are you doing, you crazy woman?" I spat and said, "Sweeping the garbage." Then I swept the sewage on the ground even more forcefully, spraying it on them. They screamed and stepped back continuously. The passers-by around gathered in a circle to watch the show. My sister-in-law pointed at me, her hand trembling a little. You. You, she stammered and couldn't say a complete sentence for a long time. I directly swept the broom towards her face, and her face turned black in an instant. She shrieked hysterically and rushed towards me to hit me. But the boss behind her grabbed her. Hey, if you want to fight, go somewhere else. Don't make a scene in front of my store. The mistress, with a pale face, tried to persuade my sister-in-law not to be excited. Isabel, don't argue with this kind of woman. Let's go wash our faces first. Then she tried to pull my sister-in-law into the restaurant. The boss stretched out a leg at the door of the store and looked at them sideways. Sorry, our store doesn't serve dogs. The mistress and my sister-in-law were stunned. It took them a while to curse the boss loudly and question him what he meant. Is this how you do business? Driving customers away. The boss leisurely took out a megaphone. Neighbors, come and take a look. Something incredible has happened on our street. The sister-in-law worked day and night to save tuition fees for her sister-in-law, sending her to college. But who would have thought that she raised an ungrateful person who, together with the mistress, forced her sister-in-law to divorce? Do you think there are such heartless people in the world? The onlooking crowd immediately started talking and pointing at the mistress and my sister-in-law. Everyone, tell me, if such people enter our stores, won't they dirty our eyes? So, to avoid affecting the dining mood of our customers, you two are not allowed to enter the store for consumption from now on. It's better to take a detour when passing by because the street in front of the store also belongs to the contracted area of our store. If I'm in a bad mood one day and raise a vicious dog that bites you, I won't be responsible. The crowd burst into applause and cheers. I looked around. There were no lack of landlords from this street who came to the meeting today. I watched with glee as the mistress and my sister-in-law's faces turned the color of liver. As they say in life, you can't do without money. The two of them glared at me viciously. Let's go. If this store doesn't do business, does it mean the whole street won't either? The two of them rushed in a hurry to the barber shop next door. After all, their faces were covered with the stinky sewage from the gutter and it was unbearably disgusting. But the barber shop assistants stood in a row, folding their arms, looking at the two of them leisurely. What do you mean? You don't want the money that comes to you, right? Isabel, the mistress, didn't expect to be turned away again. She was furious and started shouting in front of the barber shop. TSK, TSK, you're too dirty. We don't serve dirty dogs here, especially those who are rotten to the core. The crowd around burst into laughter. Isabel and my sister-in-law blushed with shame. My sister-in-law broke down emotionally, sat on the ground, and started crying. She called Ethan, brother, come quickly. Isabel and I are being bullied. I was almost laughing to death at the scene. In the years of my marriage, I hadn't laughed so heartily for a long time. I raised my wrist and looked at my watch. Ethan, you'd better come quickly. I haven't had lunch yet. The boss of the fruit store next to us brought me a chair and a fruit plate, asking me to take a rest. I lay in the rocking chair, gently fanning myself, half closing my eyes as I put the sliced honey peaches into my mouth. Looking at my sister-in-law crying on the ground, I had never felt life was so pleasant. Isabel, are you okay? Ethan rushed over in a hurry, helped up the mistress who was squatting on the ground, and ignored my sister-in-law who was crying hysterically. I looked at my watch. 18 minutes. He came quite fast, following the mistress's venomous gaze. Ethan saw me enjoying the show. He quickly walked up to me, raised his hand, and wanted to hit me, but was stopped by the barber shop assistant. Olivia, what do you mean? We're already divorced. Do you have to keep pestering me like this? Don't think you can get my attention this way. I'm not going back. Ethan looked at me with contempt. Well, these words made me laugh. Seeing me laughing non-stop, Ethan got even angrier. He wanted to come at me but was tightly held by the barbershop assistant. I stood up and walked forward. I originally wanted to use my hand, but thought it was too dirty. So I picked up a fruit fork and gently patted his cheek. Ethan, I'm telling you. None of your family members will be able to buy anything on this street. Ethan seemed to have heard the most ridiculous joke. He sneered, "Who do you think you are?" "Who do I think I am?" I said to the barbershop assistant, "Go, call all the bosses on this street here." Olivia, are you out of your mind? What kind of daydream are you having in broad daylight? Do you think the bosses will listen to you? Ethan looked at me like I was a fool. The mistress walked over and took his arm. Ethan, don't be angry. Olivia just cares about you too much, that's why she's like this. It's all my fault. Ethan hugged her and coaxed her softly. While they were talking, more than a dozen bosses had already stood in front of me, lined up in a row, and bowed. "Hello, Olivia." The thick voices of more than a dozen middle-aged men gathered together, scaring the mistress and Ethan silly. I sat down again leisurely, fanning myself. "Look carefully. From now on, these 3 dogs are not allowed to appear in any of your stores." "Okay, Olivia." The bosses replied in unison. I waved my hand and told them to disperse. When I looked back, the 3 of them were frozen in place. My sister-in-law stammered and asked me, "Sister-in-law, why do they all listen to you?" I chuckled. "Why else? Because I'm their landlady. These grapes are so sweet today. Oh, by the way, I'm divorced from this jerk. Don't call me sister-in-law anymore. Honey, where did you get so much money?" Ethan pushed the mistress away and tried to hold my hand obsequiously. I kicked him away. "Dirty thing, stay away from me." "Who are you calling honey? Jerk. Can't you understand that I'm divorced from you?" Suddenly, Ethan knelt down with a thud, kept slapping himself, and apologized to me repeatedly. "I'm sorry, Olivia. I was wrong. She seduced me. I was just having fun with her. I didn't really want to divorce you." The mistress stood aside with a deathly pale face. I glanced at her. I had had enough fun today. It was time to stop. I got tired of watching this drama. I got in my car and left. Glancing at the rearview mirror, I saw that idiot Ethan trying to catch up with me. He's really out of his mind. I spent a large amount of advertising fees to ask all the bosses to broadcast the shameful deeds of their ungrateful family on the big screens in their stores non-stop whenever they had time. I also hired some idle people on the street to tell their story with a megaphone. Soon, people within dozens of miles knew about their shameful deeds. Not only did the stores near the community refuse to do business with them, but even if they went to more distant places, they would be pointed at and gossiped about. Actually, I originally wanted to make this incident a hot topic on the internet. But then I looked at my innocent and lovely daughter. I didn't want her classmates to know that she had such a disgraceful father in the future, nor did I want her to see these dirty things left on the internet when she grew up. So I could only use this simple and unadorned method. I looked at the balance in my card again. There's too much money. I can't spend it all. The Ethan's family now has to wear masks whenever they go out. Their doorstep is always filled with garbage, and there are unsightly words sprayed with paint. His mother, who was already in poor health, was so angry that she fell ill. Helplessly, they wanted to sell the house and leave. Finally, the day I've been waiting for has come. I contacted the real estate agent and, taking advantage of their eagerness to sell, bought the house at an extremely low price. I knew they must be heartbroken because the agent told me that their faces were extremely ugly when they signed the contract, and the mother-in-law kept sighing. I sneered. It wasn't the most heartbreaking moment yet. Because in another month, this area of the community will be announced as a demolition area, and property owners can get huge compensation. That's why I bought 15 shops in one go. Before long, 100 million will turn into 200 million. I sighed. There's too much money. I can't spend it all. Since I can't spend it all, let's keep having fun. I looked coldly at Ethan's family who were moving away. You owe me far more than this. In the hot spring pool of my resort hotel, looking at the green mountains surrounding in the distance, I wondered who would be next. My phone received a message. I swiped the screen. It would be my sister-in-law. Back then, your mother thought you were a girl and it was useless to study so much. She insisted that you go to the factory to work and subsidize the family. It was me who promised to cover your tuition fees so your mother didn't tear up your admission notice. I set up a snack stand at night and did physical labor on the construction site during the day. You used my hard-earned money to go to college after graduation with a decent job. I didn't ask you for a single cent in return. But instead, you joined forces with the mistress and stepped on me. Then you should go back to where you belong. In another week, it will be the annual meeting of my sister-in-law's company. The annual meeting will be held in one of the most luxurious five-star hotels in the city, and all the headquarters leaders will come to attend. Because of her good figure and appearance, and also her good performance, she was selected as the host. I knew she attached great importance to this opportunity to show off. 3 months ago, she asked me to do more work. She wanted to buy an evening dress worth 50,000 yuan to outshine everyone at that time. 50,000 yuan. In the 7 years since I married into Ethan's family, the total cost of all the clothes I bought might not even reach 10,000 yuan. Yet she could ask me to buy such an expensive dress so matter-of-factly. Just because I was always submissive and meek at home. I looked at the information sent by others on the computer screen, my eyes cold. Then I'll let you have a good time showing off. Soon it was the day of the dinner. After all, it was a large-scale group, and the entire venue was decorated extremely luxuriously. The guests had all taken their seats. I stood in the corner, watching my sister-in-law who was dressed up, rehearsing lines with the male host on the stage. In the family seat downstairs, Ethan and his mother proudly raised their heads, looking at their daughter who was the center of attention. How could they not be proud? After all, she was the only college student in their family in 3 generations. The only college student supported with the blood of her sister-in-law. I wonder if she will still be the pride of your hearts after the good show starts later. The party officially started. After a dance, my sister-in-law, holding the hem of her dress, gracefully walked to the center of the stage. She maintained a proper smile, nodding to the guests from all sides. The little black evening dress outlined her graceful figure just right. Suddenly, a black figure rushed onto the stage and knocked my sister-in-law down. It was a middle-aged woman. She tightly clutched my sister-in-law's neck and fiercely scratched her face with her fingernails, leaving several bloodstains. You shameless slut! How dare you seduce my man? If your mother didn't teach you how to be a decent person, I'll teach you. My sister-in-law's screams echoed throughout the venue, and on the big screen behind her, a video played at the right moment. In the video, she was intertwined passionately with the company's leader on the bed, in a very explicit scene. The venue was in an entire uproar. The security guards, who came to their senses, quickly separated the two. But by then, my sister-in-law's carefully done hairstyle had been torn to pieces, and her face was covered with terrifying bloodstains. Illuminated by the lights, it almost scared the children downstairs into crying. The woman broke free from the security guard's restraint, grabbed the microphone, and loudly cursed my sister-in-law and the scumbag. Her vicious curses made everyone present frown. Only I didn't. I swirled the red wine glass in my hand, enjoying this wonderful show. After this incident, my sister-in-law naturally had no face to stay in the company any longer. She wanted to find a job elsewhere but was forced by her mother-in-law to go back to their hometown for a blind date. Her mother-in-law said that after such a scandal, she was not allowed to show up in front of her every day. It was embarrassing to look at her. Moreover, my sister-in-law's face was scratched badly, and she wouldn't be able to marry into a wealthy family in the future. She was forced to marry a bachelor in the village who was over 40 years old. He had no education but was full of brute strength and was well known for his bad temper. But he was the one who offered the highest betrothal gift, a full 200,000 yuan. Just like that, her life was bound. On the day my sister-in-law got married, I found an opportunity to meet her privately. I looked at her with a smile in my eyes. I've known about your affair with the company leader for a long time. She looked at me in disbelief, and then her eyes were filled with venom. It's you. I wished her to enjoy the life ahead and have a few chubby babies. I closed the door and left without looking back. Behind me, there were my sister-in-law's hysterical curses. I knew she really wanted to come up and tear me apart, but unfortunately, her hands and feet were tied. Just like her life. I said, since you're an ungrateful person, then you should go back to where you should be. My sister-in-law was dealt with. Next, it's your turn, Ethan. I, accompanied by several bodyguards, sat grandly in the rented house of Ethan's family. TSK, it's really shabby. It's a handshake building in the urban village, without even a ray of sunlight. I looked at the three people in front of me, trembling: Ethan, the mistress, and that old woman. I sipped my tea unhurriedly. What, Isabel, are you divorced too? And still fooling around with Ethan? Aren't you afraid of getting beaten? I looked at the mistress, who had bruises all over her body, with great interest, feeling extremely pleased inside. She tightly grabbed Ethan's arm. You've already divorced Ethan. You're not trying to win him back today, are you? Hearing this, Ethan's eyes lit up. He shook off the mistress's arm, crawled on his knees to my feet, and tried to hold my calf, but was kicked away by the bodyguard. His lower back hit the table leg. He curled up in pain on the ground, still constantly apologizing. Olivia, I really know I was wrong. I was just temporarily blinded by lard. Please forgive me this once. I promise I'll treat you like an ancestor from now on. I chuckled. Are you going to treat me like an ancestor, or treat my money like an ancestor? The old woman tremblingly came forward to refill my tea, and then stood far away from the bodyguard. Olivia, what you said isn't right. We were a family before. My son and I treated you so well before. Why can't you forgive us just because of one mistake? Which man doesn't fool around outside? He just made a mistake that all men make. The old woman carefully observed my expression. Seeing that I wasn't angry, she stammered and continued. Besides, Luna is after all Ethan's daughter. You don't want the child to grow up without a father at such a young age, do you? Look at you, a single mother and child. If you're bullied in the future, there'll be no one to help you. How pitiful. I seem to have heard the most ridiculous joke. I poked the bodyguard next to me. I'll have no one to help me if I'm bullied? The bodyguard straightened his chest and shouted loudly, I'll defend Miss Olivia to the death. This startled the three fools next to them, and they didn't dare to say anything more. You treated me well? Sometimes I really want to dig out your hearts to see if they're red or black. I've been married to your Ethan's family for 7 years. I haven't even bought a decent piece of clothing, yet I paid off hundreds of thousands of yuan in debts for you. Old woman, you said you were uncomfortable here and there every other day. Which time didn't I accompany you to the hospital with respect? Not only did I cook 3 meals a day for you all, but I also served the meals right into your hands. As long as I was at home, I never let you get your hands wet even a little bit. And how did you repay me? I slammed the teacup heavily on the table. The old woman was so frightened that she immediately knelt down and started kowtowing to me, and soon her forehead was bleeding from the knocking. I sneered. I'm tired today. I'll settle accounts with you one by one later." After saying that, I turned around and left with the bodyguards. Actually, I haven't decided how to deal with them yet. But I just want to make them live in constant fear day and night. When I got home, my daughter was obediently building blocks in the living room and the tutor beside her was looking at her with tender eyes. After seeing me, the tutor kept reporting to me what my daughter had learned today, in which aspects she had made progress, and what the subsequent arrangements were. I nodded continuously. This tutor is a postgraduate I hired at a high price from a 985 university, giving her an opportunity to work-study. She really didn't disappoint me. With her company, my daughter quickly adapted to life without her father, and her personality became more and more cheerful. Moreover, the whole family didn't accompany my daughter much before. All she got from them was endless disgust and abuse. After all, she wasn't the grandson they had been longing for. I've always believed that high-quality companionship is better than a so-called seemingly peaceful family that is actually rotten inside. I saw the tutor off, then held my daughter and accompanied her to watch cartoons. "Luna, from now on, it's just you and me. You won't be able to see your father and grandma anymore. Will you be unhappy?" My daughter took my hand. Mom wasn't happy there at all, and Luna wasn't happy either. Luna doesn't want them either. I looked at my daughter with eyes full of relief and tears, rubbing her hair. "She's really my little angel." I didn't want to entangle with that family anymore, but villains are always villains. They will try every means to fight for benefits that don't belong to them. But I never expected that they could do such despicable and crazy things. One day, I was discussing an investment agreement with a technology company when I suddenly received a video. In the video, my daughter was tied up, crying so hard that she was almost out of breath and kept shouting "Mom, save me" in her mouth. My mind went blank instantly and I was trembling with fear all over. Right away, I received a call from Ethan. "Olivia, you bitch, you don't appreciate my kindness. Just because you have a little money, you show off in front of me, huh? Since you have so much money, it's not too much to give your child's father some to spend, right? If I don't receive 10 million yuan within today, you can wait to collect your daughter's body. Anyway, I don't want to live a life without money. Before I die, I'll take someone with me so that you can taste my pain too." Listening to the busy tone after the phone was hung up, I froze in place. Should I call the police? But I'm really afraid that Ethan, that crazy guy, will do anything. He and the old woman never liked Luna. When I wasn't at home, they often beat and scolded Luna even when she didn't do anything wrong. Now I don't know how they're torturing my daughter. How scared Luna must be without me by her side. Thinking of this, my heart was twisted with pain. Even if I call the police and catch them, if I get back my daughter's corpse, my world will completely collapse. Thinking of this terrible consequence, I quickly contacted several banks to prepare cash for me. I packed all the cash and put it in the trunk. At first, I was thinking about whether to bring bodyguards, but he had my daughter in his hands. I couldn't afford any accidents. In the end, I drove alone to the address Ethan sent. Anyway, I had to save my daughter. Even if it meant a desperate fight, I had to be with my daughter. After driving for about 2 hours, the navigation took me to an abandoned warehouse in the suburbs. There were deep mountains all around, and I hardly met any pedestrians or vehicles along the way. I was extremely nervous. After I entered, I saw my poor Luna tied to a chair at a glance, her head drooping feebly. I let out a furious roar, my eyes wide with anger, and rushed towards my daughter. But Ethan, who came out from behind, hit me on the leg with a stick. I knelt down in pain, and he walked over and stepped on my face tightly. "Be arrogant. Weren't you so arrogant before? Why are you lying there like a dead pig now? Mom, come here. Let you vent your anger too." He handed the stick to the old woman. "Ah, The intense pain in my waist almost made me bite through my lips. I tried my best not to make a sound, afraid of scaring my daughter. But she was still woken up. Looking at me lying pale on the ground, she was terrified and struggled frantically on the chair. "Don't hit my mom. Don't hit my mom." She rolled to the ground with the chair, trying to crawl towards me, but was kicked away by Ethan. "You want money, right? I've brought the money. It's in the car. Go get it. Hurry up." Hearing this, Ethan stopped and turned around to go outside to get the money. "If you dare to play any tricks, you'll both die here today." The old woman looked at me viciously and followed Ethan to get the money. I quickly endured the pain all over my body, struggled to get up, and untied the rope on my daughter. "Luna, don't be afraid. Mom will get you out of here right away." I held my trembling daughter in my arms. Since Ethan and the others hadn't come in yet, I looked for a back door to escape. But soon I was desperate. The only way out was the front door they had just walked out of. There was no time left. I had to take a gamble. I held my daughter tightly and rushed to the door in one breath, but happened to run into Ethan, who was coming back with the money. He looked at me with a ferocious face, laughing like a devil. "Where do you think you're going? Aren't we a family? Since you're here, don't leave." He tied both me and my daughter to a pillar, then pulled the old woman aside to discuss something in a low voice. Suddenly, a huge argument broke out, and then it gradually subsided, as if they had reached an agreement. He walked over and looked at me indifferently. "Don't blame me for being cruel. No one can guarantee that if I let you go, you won't call the police." I realized something. Looking at my young daughter, I pleaded with him desperately. "I beg you, let Luna go, okay? She's your own daughter. How can you be so heartless? Won't you have nightmares at night?" Ethan hesitated for a moment, then his eyes turned fierce again. "I can have countless daughters, but I only have one life. I can make it quick, so you'll suffer less. Consider it an act of kindness on my part." He raised the knife, and I stared at him with eyes wide in desperation, pleading for him to stop. Suddenly, there was a gunshot. Ethan fell to the ground in response, and the old woman let out a terrified scream. A group of police officers rushed into the warehouse and quickly subdued Ethan. Holding my still terrified daughter, I sat shivering in the ambulance, not understanding why all this had happened so suddenly. It was not until the police asked me to make a statement that I saw the mistress, Isabel. She looked at me, sobbing uncontrollably, and apologized, confessing everything. It turned out that when Ethan was hanging out with some social loafers, he became addicted to gambling. But those people were no different from scammers in a pig butchering scam. At first, they let him win some small amounts. And then they set up various traps until he lost all his property and was burdened with huge loans. Cornered by the debt collectors, Ethan thought of the large amount of money I suddenly had and set his sights on Luna. Since he was Luna's father, when he went to pick Luna up from kindergarten, the daughter followed him without any precautions. How could a 6-year-old child know that her father was leading her to a dead end? After learning about all this, the mistress pretended to agree to cooperate with him and run away together after the deed was done. In fact, she had been waiting for an opportunity to call the police. She was arranged by Ethan to secretly follow me. During this period, she wavered several times. After all, it was 10 million in cash. With that money, she could live a good life. But when she learned from Ethan that he was going to kill us to silence us, she no longer hesitated. When she saw me rushing to the warehouse with the money, she called the police. Fortunately, everything was in time. "Olivia, I'm sorry. I ruined your family. I never thought Ethan would be so insane. It almost led to a huge disaster. I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life." I looked at her trembling body from crying and let out a long sigh. "Don't you dare hit my wife. It seems this sentence, "Don't you dare hit my wife," was repeated from before and might be a bit out of place here. Maybe it's a leftover from the story telling. But I'll keep it as per the original text. Actually, in the end, I should be grateful to you for making me see his true colors. And thank you for saving me and my daughter at the last moment. But a mistress is always a mistress. I won't forgive the wrong you've done. We're even from now on. In this case, with the culprits caught red-handed and a complete chain of evidence, the court quickly sentenced the three of them according to the law. I didn't attend their sentencing hearing. Looking at them even once more would make me feel disgusted. I found a real estate agent to liquidate all my assets in this city. After the transactions were completed, the balance in my bank card became 700 million. This sum of money is enough for my daughter and me to live a worry-free life for the rest of our lives. Whether she gets married or not, I have the ability to support her for a lifetime, and I'll never let her repeat my life. I took my daughter and immigrated to a fairy tale-like country. Here, there are castles that my daughter loves, the Disneyland she adores, and the life close to nature that I like. I take her with me. In spring, we go camping on the grassland and fly kites. In summer, we go camping by the lake and fall asleep while looking at the star-filled sky at night. In autumn, I take her to a country with maple-covered ground to paint by the blue lake. In winter, we go skiing at the ski resort. I want to make up for the childhood and the whole life that I missed with her. I looked at my daughter riding on a horse in the distance. The little girl who used to be no taller than my waist has now grown into a graceful young lady. She waved the horsewhip in her hand and galloped towards me. "Mom, why don't you ride with me?" I looked at her with a beaming smile. "Then can you take Mom with you?" She pulled me onto the horseback with a delighted face and we galloped across the prairie together. Our laughter resounded throughout the sky. Life is truly wonderful. A wealthy life is even more wonderful.